Okay. The focus group also identified the use of respectful language. Things such as these, referring to the individuals who have the diagnosis as people with autism or people with an ASD rather than autistics. Hopefully not too many have used that term anymore, but you do still hear it in the research community especially. And I know that some parents feel okay calling their child an autistic child. As professionals, the preference is to put the child first, a child with autism or a child with an ASD rather than an autistic child. Avoid the use of high or low functioning. Also gets used a lot in ASD because of the spectrum. And either end can be disrespectful to the person, really. So we might need to think of other terminology that would be more respectful when referring to people who is more severely affected by ASD or less severely affected by ASD, more able, less able, whatever. You might have terms yourself that you can come up with. And call people by their name, not mom or dad. So the people who say, and how's mom coping in all of this? I don't know about some of you mothers who are in the room, but I know when our kids were little and someone called my wife mom, her response was, I'm not your mother. She had enough people calling her mom, I think. So this is, again, referring to people by their name as individuals. People also referred to keeping the language professional. So avoid injecting personal opinions or comments. So we had reports from parents of workers commenting on their real life scenarios that they've described with their child with a personal opinion, like, this is, my child did this and this and this and this, and the worker says, oh, that's terrible, that's horrible, you shouldn't have to put up with that. And the parent, on the other hand, is thinking, really? This is my life. I do this every day. I didn't think it was so horrible. And so instead of feeling better about the support they're receiving, they're actually feeling worse about the situation they find themselves in on a regular basis with their child. Or the reverse of that too, where someone is describing what they're coping with, but a worker knows of much worse situations that other families are coping with and says, you're lucky. Some people are dealing with. That doesn't help either. That also doesn't make the parent feel any better to be told that as hard as they've got it, as hard as they feel they have it, they should feel fortunate. Doesn't work that way. I remember our psychologist at Carrie's place thinking, this was in her early days of work, thinking that she had good news to tell a family, that their son had Asperger's rather than autism. And she was quite dismayed when the family didn't take it as good news. But that isn't the case. It doesn't matter that Asperger's may be seen as a milder form of autism. It's still not going to be good news. Okay, don't get chummy. So saying things like, oh, you know what, when my child acts like that, this is what I do. You can't relate your own experiences necessarily to the family's experience. And don't talk about a person with ASD in their presence without including them in the conversation. So if the person with ASD is present, or even if they're within hearing shot, if it's a telephone conversation, you should always, as workers or support people, assume the competence of the individual. It's likely that they're taking in a whole lot more than they may be able to demonstrate that they're taking in. And this has been proven over and over again by people who can now talk about their disorder and can describe what it was like when they were children, and have written books and produced movies and so on about their experiences. And Temple Grandin, everybody knows who Temple Grandin is? Some don't, yeah. She's probably the world's most famous person with autism, who has written several books and has had a movie made about her. Anyway, she talked about that when she was a kid, that people would talk about her when she was sitting there with them as though she was a piece of furniture, is how she described it. Not present, and they're talking about her behaviors and so on. So when you're on the phone with someone, you should ask if the person is in the room with the parent. And be cautious about what you're asking the parent then on the phone in that context, because the person with ASD listening in will be taking in, more than likely taking in what the parent is saying about them, even if they're running in circles in the corner, doing laps around the kitchen while the person's on the phone. They're likely taking that information in. Whenever I talk about this with people, just being aware of that, assume more competence than the individual may be able to demonstrate. I think of a woman, she was from North Bay, Shirley Smith. She was a consultant to school boards and up there, and she used to tell the teachers that she consulted to, be careful what you say about these kids, because one of these days they're going to write a book and you'll be in it. So, same caution. It's happened many times. Lots of books written by people with autism. Okay, a few more reflections. In the focus group, we asked people to complete the sentence, "I like it when." And these are some of the things that they came up with. I like it when people say, "I'm glad you called." So that's one of those opening lines, one of those first responses to parents calling for support for the first time. Are there other phrases that you use or that you find are helpful when responding to people's calls? No? What about the mums? Are there ones that you'd like to hear?
Nothing more than I've already seen.
I always also liked, "You've called the right place." Even if you're not the right place, now you're going to immediately get them connected to the right place. So it's the right door regardless. There's nothing better than hearing that welcoming message as opposed to, "Oh, we don't do that," or "Yeah, that's not what our service is for." The discouraging messages to families. I like it when people offer to make connections for me. Lots of parents have said, "If someone will do it, please, one thing off my plate." This is what the warm transfer is all about. So no more giving out of more work to the parent, giving back the parent more work to do. I like it when people offer to find out answers they don't know and get back to me rather than just saying, "I don't know," and leaving it at that. So the message, I think, is it's okay not to know, but it's not okay not to help. So help the person find out, or help find that for the person. I like it when people are honest and they say things like, "I can't begin to imagine how difficult that must be for you," rather than things like, "I know how you feel." You can't possibly, sometimes. I like it when people use non-judgmental comments. So again, that's going back to that experience of people saying, "How horrible that must be," rather than saying something like, "Well, that's different." Or maybe you have better statements to come up with in that one too. We also had people complete the phrase, "I don't like it when." And some of these are the opposites of the last slide. When people say, "I know how you feel." I don't like it when people say, "Never." It's an interesting one. When you're seeking help and you hear the word "never," it's a heel digger, isn't it? Never? What do you mean never? I will make that happen. So even if you think it's unlikely that someone will be able to access that service this year or get that funding in time for this, the word never shouldn't come into your vocabulary. I don't like when people think they're helping by giving me more work to do. And again, that's one of the pieces we're trying to improve upon. So we also asked the intake workers for some key messages that they like to use, as we've been doing here. So you've heard most of these already. I'm glad you called. I'll help you find the support you need, even if it's not with us. That's an important message of the no wrong door system. I don't know, but I'll find out and call you back within 48 hours. Always good if families know when to expect your response. And what's the best way to reach you? Some families are going to say, you'll never get me by phone. It's going to be easier by email, vice versa. A cell phone versus a home phone, and so on. So checking on what will be the most convenient for the families. Those are the experiences of the intake workers that were in our focus group.